All right, welcome back to the channel. We're going with the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. We're not going to waste too much time. Let's jump right into the content. Now, when we look at what's happening right now, basically you can go to like the daily chart and get a better look at this. But you can see that we formed a demand down here. You go like to the 4 hour, it's a little bit easier to identify because it's definitely a demand that has been formed at these levels. Now, we can also identify that over basically the past month, 4 weeks, we've been just trending in the upside, breaking out of this actually bullish channel and kind of mounting on top of it. So that's where we're at right now. Now, yesterday's video and basically videos from the past week or so, I see us continuing. Now, for anyone asking questions of when do you start to think of a possible reversal, coming into some of these lower time frames, I believe you have to look for a flip of this demand. So what would I be looking at? Now, we already know this is a key level around 12.47. And again, if you want to know exactly where that level comes from, we zoom out to find our key levels. You can see our swing high from August 2020. So we can know that's a respectable key level that's been there for some time. It's been respected very well over time also. Now, so coming back into like the 15 minutes, some lower time frames to give you a visual here. We can see, yes, we're inside demand and we basically just been functioning here all day long. Now, what I'll tell you right now, if you sit here for like an extended period of time, I would become maybe more bearish. But over time, if we're just sitting here and pushing up and we're still getting out of this or trying to get out of this trend and we're kind of just baselining here, I have to still be bullish in the short term, right? Why? Because we continue to push down to this demand, but what happens based on volume is it kind of just dies out. And I have to make this video a little bit quicker because we have a webinar going on today for all the members and supporters of the channel. So we will have that going on later, but I have to knock this video out soon. I can't wait to the end of the day, unfortunately. But looking at how we're moving, I have to anticipate a bounce from this level, and that's where I am right now. So going on the day, what did I trade? What was I looking at? And before we get into that, I have to ask you to do two things: like and subscribe. Every single day I am making videos for you, so you are prepared on the market and you know what to expect. Most of all, biased, unbiased, you're going to get the opinion here on the channel. And again, win, lose, draw, I always tell you. Now, going into this very I want to talk about this because it kind of shows some transparency. I posted my basic trades on the day. I had AMD and Netflix. Now, I was red, but Netflix just had a really nice pop into the end of the day. So I do have to kind of change this up. And it's a pleasant little surprise here for me at the end of the day. Here's the recap of the end of the day of what I was looking for and kind of trading all day long. I had Netflix and I got AMD. Now, basically, this is how my positions ended here on the day. As you can see, let me bring this over so it's a little bit easier. So you can see AMD went up a little bit. It'll probably end red around 850. Netflix, I made about 1400, so I'm happy there. And then Nvidia, I made like 6,000 yesterday and then an additional 3,000 from where we closed yesterday because we pushed up to 229. So I've gotten out of all those positions and still holding my AMD. And basically I'm using Netflix to mitigate any drawdown that I have. So you guys can just kind of understand what I'm doing, what I'm thinking. But that's my viewpoint there. That's all posted on Twitter or in Discord, so make sure you're subscribed there. Now, looking at the end of the day movement, again, food for thought and some things that we're going to be seeing. I anticipate, basically we had that nice little push up, day started, we had some downside here, and we're kind of just chilling. If anything that we're doing, in my opinion, you're range trading at highs, which looks really bullish, and again, in my opinion, in the short term still. If we go to Yahoo Finance, and I love going through Yahoo Finance to show you the visuals of volume, because I think it just gives you the best look. Now, again, right now it is 10 minutes left in the day, so I anticipate volume will come out around 72 million, like at least another 10 million. I think that's being pretty generous also. So you'll come in a little bit underneath your 30-day average, which right now your 30-day average on SPY is around 78 million. So what have we seen so far? So we can see that yesterday we had some selling coming in, but ultimately buyers took us back up to local highs and we saw an increase of volume. Then we saw selling the time before that where we closed. So you can see our high was 411, our close was on the sell side. So we can see today or this day was a better notion of looking at sell side having control. And this is essentially when we trended at these lows all day there. Now what happened? No buyers were in the market. Again, volume very, very low. So these are just visuals I have to be watching and concerned with. 94 million here. We went over this day. We saw a lot of buying early on and then selling near the end of the day. It was like a mix of volume, so I won't categorize it in either direction. But right now, even with today, so you start out, your open ups at 413 and you're basically going to end the day probably around 410, 409. I wanted to just give you a visual that, in my opinion, that this is still not confirmation of downside. What keeps happening? You're consolidating with decreased volume. So far, every time this has happened, it has led to another breakout towards the upside. So again, just basing it on what has happened and what kind of continues to happen in the market, that's what I'm looking at. Going into SPY, I know a lot of people have been asking questions here on SPY. Now, my big level here on SPY is around 410.7. That's my major level. Now, I can go into exactly why, showing you really quick here on the daily. So we can see it was our swing highs that we had about right here. But ultimately, the major level that we're watching is the swing low that we had back on February 24th of 2021, or 22, I'm sorry, so last year. Kind of weird, it's already 2023, but right now you're kind of just sitting at that level. But I want to go on to show you something else here. If we look here at the daily time frame, a few things that I think you need to be watching. One, if we look here at the 200 daily moving average, you're clearly mounted on top and pushing above, well above it at that also. But if we come in here and then we start to look at kind of the pattern that we're forming here, maybe it's forced a little bit here or there, but nonetheless, it still looks like you are trying to flag here on SPY. And then you go to Nasdaq and you paint maybe even a better picture. Still somewhat trying to flag here. Now, again, it's a little bit broken, but the main thing that we need to be watching is how we're respecting demand on repeat. And the fact that we just made a new demand basically at local highs. So again, if we're looking at the market, we're not looking at it from a lens of where are we going to move in 5 minutes from now or even a day from now. To actually establish a trend, you want to see something that's going to kind of stick with you for the next few weeks. And that's why we've made so much money here in the market on all these plays. And again, for anyone saying or asking questions, well, Tyler, we ended up moving down on the day. The day wasn't as good as we thought it was. It wasn't necessarily bullish. But how about all the stocks that we mentioned yesterday that we love so much, right? What about Netflix? Remember that when we talked about it yesterday? You came out at 830, you pushed down right to the 200 SMA, you pushed right back up. Great opportunity. Posted it on Twitter so everyone had that opportunity also, not just in Discord. What about Microsoft? We looked at Microsoft. What we talked about yesterday here, pushing straight up after you mounted 267, you pushed right up almost to 277. Another great push there. What about Nvidia? Another play that we've been talking about. Again, you push it from 221 all the way, hit the key level and break and invalidate supply here, pushing all the way up to 228 and then pushing back down. Really trying to mount this level. Okay, well, let's keep going on. AMD, what's happened here? You start to mount 85 yesterday. We talked about that. You ended up pushing to 88 and came back down. I started to buy once you came back down to these levels, and I'm really liking the fact that you're trying to hold 85 near the end of the day. So these are just things that I'm watching in the market in areas that I'm really enjoying the movement. And we talked a little bit about Google as well yesterday. I like the upside potential, but the big problem with Google, and I know people are going to ask questions about why you dropped like this, it wasn't based on technicals. It wasn't based on a double top especially. It was based on them force releasing Bard, which is their AI platform. Now, what have we been saying? AI is definitely where the most momentum is. That's why Microsoft is going absolutely bananas right now. But the dangers with this is something like Google. They force release something to try to keep up with competition, and it backfired. It was a major failure for them, and that's why they dropped right out of the gate down to 102. And then once it was confirmed that it was them that it happened with, they dropped down to 98, almost back down to a key level, and you're making a bear flag. So again, some of these you can look at technicals and we can like them. I can like a chart all day long, but if they come out the next day with bad information, then there's just nothing you can do about that. So I encourage you, if you were trading something like Google or looking at this, come at it with the viewpoint of, I couldn't have anticipated that it would be a massive failure on their end, or I couldn't have known any of that information that would have been released. Sometimes fundamentals will just kick your butt, and that's just kind of the way that it goes. So just understand and know that. I don't want to keep people too long here on the video. Now, a few other visuals I am watching, going to be VIX, TLT, and HYG. A lot of people asking questions about these. So number one, VIX. VIX, if we look here at the daily time frame, what's going on here? You came right down to the massive level we talked about. Remember, we've been talking about this for some time. Go watch some previous videos. Our massive level was basically down to 18 to 19, but we basically broke below 52-week highs. Once that broke, you came right back down to our next level, and guess what happened? It's pretty crazy. Most of these levels, supply and demand, really does work. You can see you bounce out of 17, pushing right back up to 20. But what I'm going to tell you right now, people saying, well, VIX is popping, it's moving up, it's this, it's that. In my opinion, when we look at VIX, the fact that you're moving up, 3.5 points on VIX on this type of lackluster movement, it's making it more and more promising for me when I'm looking at my long side thesis, because ultimately when the market's going up, typically VIX is dropping like 9 out of 10 times. So I like that we retrace to the upside, giving us again more room back towards the upside. And we're just getting consolidation here at these levels. Until we make a new local low, I have to remain with this thesis and nothing's going to change on my side of this. So again, we're sitting at demand. And if you want to see these levels, they're all on Twitter, but you're still even above your 200 SMA on the daily. Like, you have so much support still up here that there's no logical reason to still be bearish in the short term right now. So these are things I'm looking at right now. Again, and on top of that, you have like the golden cross and all that stuff happening, which again, we're not huge fans of here, but it's just to look at all the facts that are out there. To be bearish right now, I would have to be biased with that viewpoint, and I would have to basically just be forcing an opinion on there. As you can see though, when we're going over the charts here, I'm never going to be forcing a thesis. I'm always looking at the facts and trying to use deductive reasoning to see if I could be wrong with my viewpoint. And right now, the only reason that I could even expect downside is if we broke this level, which we can't. And if we broke this level, I anticipate a retest of the 200 SMA, but that's just me right now. So, but right now, again, you're just holding these levels, nothing's changed, and you got to stay on the same path, especially when we look at this volume, which is absolutely atrocious. I'm going to continue to tell you, again, probably 72 million by the end of the day. You're at 63 right now. So yeah, that's probably what we see coming. 5 more minutes left in the day. And again, 72 is probably being generous. So that's what I'm looking at there. Now, stocks of the day, stock picks of the day, because this is probably the most exciting part of the video in the channel. Now, when we look at what's happening today, we have Disney earnings in the after hours, and that's going to be where all my attention is focused. I end up closing on my Netflix, but I'm probably going to buy a Netflix contract here at the end of the day because I anticipate a little bit of a dip. But right now, it's probably the most attractive pattern out there. On the daily time frame, clear ascending triangle. As you zoom out, it's glorious. It's beautiful. It's probably one of the best looking charts out there right now. Short term, I got us coming to around 386 possibly, and then the next level you can zoom out a little bit more so you can see. You can actually bring this all the way out here so you can see that level. But yeah, about 385, 386 is my next really big level here on Netflix. And then if you get above that, you have a few more gaps to be covering as well. So Netflix, I love them, but it really comes back down to Disney earnings. So I just traded them today as a basically sympathy play for Disney, and that turned out really well. Ended up moving around 25%. Some people traded in closer dated contracts in Discord, but those made more money, obviously. So that's what I'm looking at there. Going forward, AMD, one of my favorite plays here, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's starting to look a little bit weaker. I did tell everyone in Discord, if you're going to play this, the fact that you're holding below 85 is not good. And if you wanted to have a stop on the day and you didn't want to take any risk, you kind of cut if you just hold below 85. And that's where you're at right now. You did get a push up and you kind of just ended pretty terrible here on the day. And then looking at NVIDIA, possible shooting star forming here on the daily, which could be a sign of a reversal. Not a great daily candle here for semiconductors specifically. But again, like I said, a lot of my drawdown is now covered on AMD, so I'm kind of just sitting here a little bit risk-free in the short term. I'm willing to ride this overnight because, again, where are we at? We're at demand. So I like AMD, but it needs to hold above 85. You just can't do that right now. It's kind of struggling as we speak. Continue to look at some of the weaker stocks, though, and as we're at these levels and we're maybe anticipating some downside if we break demand, I like Amazon again to the downside. What I'd be watching for, though, is the reaction at 102.7. Again, it's been very lucrative, if you will. I've talked about this one a lot, to say the least. Amazon, again, one of the weaker names. That earnings was brutal. They lost 40 billion, I believe, or something like 30 billion, something crazy. Bananas. Anyways, they came just shooting down, and I think they are definitely have room to be one of the weaker names on the market. You could also argue this is a head and shoulders forming out here. Absolutely gross. Probably one of the best hedges to go short on. Still love them to the downside, but yeah, pretty gross to say the least. And the last thing I'm going to mention is going to be Boeing. And again, you look really, really good here as we look at Boeing. And what I want to do is take you over here to TrendSpider to give you a better visual. And we're going to go really quick to about the 4-hour time frame because you've been really just consolidating sideways here. Boeing, I'm going to tell you right now, absolutely love it. You've been consolidating the sideways trend. It's not really a bull flag, but this is the same type of behavior that we saw back here. You consolidated above a key level at 170, ended up pushing up higher, got a little bit more consolidation, pushed up once again. So when we look at this chart, when you're looking at Boeing, and it's the strongest name that there is in the Dow, point blank period, people keep pointing at downside, but let me just take you through what's really happening here. You can see this is a weekly chart going all the way back to 2019, slowly scaling down. You broke out of it going back to November, and remember, this is when we started talking about Boeing. Once you broke out of it, it was basically full steam ahead. And then you ended up just carrying your way all the way up to that 200 SMA on the weekly, and this thing's just performing like an absolute beast. So my target here is still on 225. I still think Boeing has a lot of room to go. It's definitely one of those slower movers, so you don't go into it with the mentality of making my money instantly, but I'm going to tell you, you look really, really good. We traded this before, made really good money, but I think it's going to perform again, kind of getting a bull flag here near the end of the day. And against everything else, it did hold up. So again, if I'm looking at something safer, I like Boeing. Downside risk is basically at a 205. Upside is the 225. But honestly, you could even start tracking higher, because when we look at the Dow, it's worth mentioning once again, that pretty disgusting pennant that's forming as we speak. If we look here at the daily time frame, look at how strong this thing has been. You've been forming just one of these nasty pennants. And I'm going to tell you, when this breaks out, and if it does break out, you have a lot of room still to move on Dow. And the one name that has shown resilience, continue to show strength in the Dow, has been Boeing, time and time again. Again, I love those guys fundamentally. Still think they have room. That's my viewpoint of the market. Quicker video today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.